Hello, folks. Welcome to Nerdopolis. I am your host, Steve, joined with my co-host, Dave.
Howdy.
And this new show is basically, as the name implies, all about nerd stuff. Kind of movies, music, games, whatever we come up with.
I don't play games, so
Well,
you won't hear much about games from me.
That's all right. We all have our little things that we talk about, books, comic books, all that fun stuff. So how was your holiday?
It was good. It was we went over to the in-laws' house in the afternoon, had lunch over there, played games, kids had fun. So it was it was nice. It was low key, laid back, and but it was good.
Very nice.
How about you?
It was good. We had our little family thing here, just me and Mandy and the kids here at the house, and then we went over to my mom's house, which is in Midwest City. And then after that was over, we took a drive up to Enid to spend the rest of the day with her family. So
Nice.
It was a lot of traveling is what it was.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a lot of traveling.
Yeah. So, obviously you've seen the new Star Wars movie.
I have.
And you went with Robert. I've actually seen it twice now, and
Lucky man.
we we had actually planned on seeing it today together, but Mother Nature had other plans.
Yeah, for those of you who are not in Oklahoma at the moment, it is really cold. We had a ton of rain yesterday, and today the temperature decided to drop, and we're getting sleet and snow on top of the said rain. It's so much fun.
Yeah, gotta love it. Had a very good non-weather eventful Christmas, but I guess Mother Nature decided to strike back the day after.
Yeah, yeah, she's been feisty lately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen Star Wars once. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was, I think like a lot of people, I went into the movie cautiously optimistic.
Yes.
I mean, granted that over the last however many months, as trailers have come out, that caution has I haven't felt the need to be quite as cautious because the trailers have been so good.
Right.
And at that end, I'm a J.J. Abrams fan. I think he does great work. One of my favorite shows of all time was a show he was a creator and showrunner on, which was Alias. I really enjoyed the Star Trek reboots. I know some people have had issues with some of them, but overall, I've really enjoyed them, and so yeah, I think that it's I think it was good. It was a very good movie, and yeah. I came out of it very happy. There was a lot going on with it. It's kind of hard to nail down, everything you liked and didn't like, because I've only seen it once, and I'm sure there's stuff I'll pick out more, in future viewings.
Yeah.
But overall, I loved Han Solo. I loved the new characters.
Yes.
I thought what they did really well in this film is they developed these new characters quite well, and everyone seemed like actual people. Unlike in the prequels where everything was so robotic and so just painfully robotic, and not in a C-3PO or R2-D2 kind of way, and in just we're going to be the stiffest actors in the world because George Lucas is apparently a tool and doesn't know how to direct people.
See, that's the thing about George Lucas. I think he's an amazing storyteller as far as coming up with these stories. But he really should have let somebody else direct the movies, which is what we got from this new Star Wars movie. We got the essence of Star Wars with somebody who actually knows how to direct a movie.
Yeah. George Lucas is great at world building. He's great at coming up with vision, grand vision, and grand ideas. He's not very good at the execution of the details of these things, which is why, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were, in a lot of ways, were better films, especially Empire, than A New Hope was. And granted, I look at those three movies, I just think of them as one whole group. I think of those three films the same way I think of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's one unit.
Yeah,
is how I think of those films.
Yeah, I tell most people that hadn't seen The Force Awakens yet. A lot of the people that I talk to had actually never seen any of the other movies, and I'm like, just watch the original trilogy. You don't have to go to the prequels, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's actually some good advice. That is some very good
advice. In more ways than one.
Yeah, because the prequels have, bless their hearts, they have so many issues that it just didn't work on so many levels, most of which I think had to do with George Lucas's bad directing. I mean, really, that more than anything else, that was what hindered those films, is his just poor directing decisions. And
casting choices, maybe.
In some casting choices, yeah. To be fair, I've heard that Hayden Christensen, for example, is a much better actor than episode 2 and 3 would lead one to believe.
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem is I think that both he and the little kid from A New Hope, or from not New Hope, Jesus, from Phantom Menace, I think they were both cast because they had, at least for moments, had good chemistry with Natalie Portman. There was a scene, the couple of scenes in Phantom Menace where the kid and Natalie Portman were sitting and talking. They actually had a good chemistry together, and I think that's what got him the part. It wasn't enough, really, in my opinion, for him to get the part. He shouldn't have gotten the part, because in everything else he did, he sucked. And I don't know if it was just they did some screen tests and they had him, had them work side by side with the other already cast people. Because if memory serves, and don't quote me on this, but I think Natalie Portman was one of the early people cast for those films.
I thought she was great in the movies.
Oh, she was, and that's the frustrating thing, is you see there were things in those movies that were really good. Ewan McGregor.
I was getting ready to say he's probably, a very close second to Alec McGuinness.
Yeah, he did a very good job. He was quite good in the films. It was the problem with those movies is what was bad was really so incredibly bad. It outshined what was good, and that sucks.
Yeah. Now, horrible prequels, specifically. I mean, bad acting aside, and everything that was wrong with them aside, I actually did enjoy episode 3.
It had moments.
Now it had its bad moments, just like the others did. But there was a lot about that movie that I liked. However, acting was not one of them. I think it was more along the lines of the telling of the story, that how Vader becomes Vader. I think they rushed it along a little bit too much, but
yeah, and that, I mean, we finally got to see Mace Windu do his thing.
Yeah.
We finally got the Emperor versus Yoda moment.
Yeah.
So there was definitely stuff in there that was good. Meh.
Yeah, I get you. It's not for everybody, but I actually enjoyed it. I mean, I'd have to say that any of the original trilogy movies are better than that one. But as far as the prequels go, I'd have to say that was my favorite one.
Yeah, I would say if I was going to rank the prequels like best to worst, it would go Revenge of the Sith, Phantom Menace, and Attack of the Clones.
Really?
Yeah, Attack of the Clones is just...
For me, Phantom Menace will always be at the bottom. That was just a horrible movie.
It is so much better than Attack of the Clones in so many different levels. And if nothing else, Hayden Christensen's acting in Attack of the Clones, one, damn near ruined the entire franchise.
Okay.
But in that movie specifically, he was so wretchedly bad.
Yeah,
and it's not that he wasn't a 10-year-old kid. This is a full-grown man who has acted before. And yes, he's in a George Lucas production, but still, damn, son. That was awful. Yeah,
it was pretty bad. But I still think Phantom Menace as a whole was probably worse. But that's all subjective, I guess.
Yeah.
Now that being said, you're gonna find this funny, but as horrible as that movie was, I actually saw it in the theater 4 times.
Really?
Yeah.
Good God, sir.
Well, I saw it once by myself. I went to the midnight showing when it first came out. And the other 3 times I went with people who had not seen it yet.
Ah, okay.
It's like, all right, yeah, I'll go. Strangely, I only saw Attack of the Clones in the theater once.
Interesting.
And then Revenge of the Sith, I think twice.
Yeah, I think I saw each of them in the theaters once.
Yeah. Now, interesting bit of trivia here, or not so interesting bit of trivia here. I have seen every Star Wars movie except for one in the theater. Unless you count the special edition, which I don't. But I never saw A New Hope in the theater when it first came out.
I saw it in a drive-in years later, but it wasn't right when it came out.
That's what I mean. I didn't see it originally.
Yeah.
I saw it when the special edition came out, but I don't really count that. When it originally came out, I was 5 years old and living in Germany, so I think I have an excuse.
Yeah, and then unless you know and sprechen die Deutsch, you might not have understood a darn thing that was going on.
But I do remember going to see Empire Strikes Back in the theater when I was like 7 years old, and it was amazing. I kind of fell in love with Star Wars at that point.
Yeah, I saw Empire in the theater, and I was also a big Star Trek fan, so I remember seeing the Star Trek films in the theater. Notably, starting with Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, that's the first one I saw in the theater too. Yeah. So back to Force Awakens, and actually I do want to announce that if you have not seen it, there are going to be some spoilers in this show, so maybe stop it now, go back and watch it, and then come back and listen to the rest of this, because I'm sure we've got a lot of stuff to talk about that's going to kind of spoil things for you, so just a warning. So, who is your favorite character from the new movie?
I don't know, man. That's actually kind of tough, because I really like a lot of them, man. I like Rey a lot. I think she is a very cool character.
Yes.
I like my brain's just dying. I like Finn. I think he is good. Mm-hmm. I think BB-8 I think is a great character. Mm-hmm. And even the pilot, who we don't get to see as much, I thought was really good. All of the new characters, honestly, they did a very good job building these new characters.
I agree. I really think this movie was a great passing of the torch.
Yes.
With the exception of Luke Skywalker, who apparently is, I'm going to have to say, obviously going to have to be in the next movie.
I think so. I think he's going to play a big part in the next film. And
I've got to say that was my least favorite moment of the film, is at the very end. So here's why. He gets star billing on all of the posters. his name is always second when they're announcing the cast. He shows up in the movie at the very end for like 40 seconds and doesn't even talk.
Yeah,
That bothered me a bit.
In a way, it would have worked a little bit better for him to be a cameo and for him to have shown up and then for the oh shit moment, the holy crap, I can't believe Luke just showed up.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you're gonna... It would be such a red herring if you're going to say, hey, we've got all the original cast except Mark Hamill decided not to come along.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, again, spoilers, since Han dies... and you know they were the way they were marketing this thing. They were marketing it not just as this film, but then the entire trilogy. They're really setting the stage for that. You know, Luke's going to play a big part in that going forward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it's that didn't bother me. I mean, it's funny. I've listened to different reviews and different things people have said, and there has been a lot of nitpicking, basically, of this, and it's almost that's about all you can do is kind of nitpick it, because it's really, really good. But in some stuff, maybe this is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. When I become a fan of something, I kind of just buy in for the most part, and so unless something is absolutely atrocious, I can get the word out. I'm in. I dive into it. It doesn't bother me if something is, like for example, the TV show Arrow, which we both watch.
Yes.
The third season was picked apart like crazy due to things like the use of a Batman villain in a Green Arrow show. It didn't bother me at all. I enjoyed it. I thought it was, well executed. I just have nothing but really love for that show, and so for me as a fan, when I get into something, unless it just really sucks balls, I'm pretty much there.
Yeah. Now let's talk a moment about that Han moment. Very dark scene, I thought.
Agreed. It was very dark.
I understand why they did it, and having read some stuff about Harrison Ford himself, how he didn't want the character to keep going and whatever. Very dark moment for me personally. Very sad moment, but it almost seemed necessary. And maybe necessary isn't the word I'm looking for. It just seemed like it fit in with the film.
Yeah, I think it did. It was... Well, you have to raise the stakes. You have to have, something there that could, really be... People could go, crap, this is... They're not fooling around.
Yeah.
This is serious business. And so much of that movie was... about the time he hits the screen, it is almost the Han Solo show.
Yeah, yeah. And
so, but it's done in a good way, and to give this a professional wrestling analogy, he is the old wrestler who's there to give the new stars a rub.
Yeah. And
so by him taking the fall, he is helping put over this new villain.
Yeah.
So from there, it makes sense, and he was perfect in that he made everyone he interacted with look good.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what someone in his role should be doing.
I think he did a really good job in this film. I think, and a lot of this, going back to an earlier comment, having to do with having a better director in the movie. I think his performance was probably better than any of his other performances in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's none of his performances were ever bad.
That's true.
This
one just had like a little bit more.
Yeah, he is a just top-notch, superb actor.
Yeah.
So when you get someone of his caliber into a project like, Star Wars, even at a young age, his swagger, his acting chops, he's fantastic. So you're going to get something great out of him when he's on screen, and what's nice is in this day and age you get genre films get these really high quality actors nowadays. Now, granted, when he was in the original trilogy, he was basically still a nobody. He was an unknown for the most part. I mean, he'd done American Graffiti.
Yeah.
So he was still a young up and coming buck, and but yeah, it was
got a really good performance out of him, especially that very last scene where he's talking to his son and trying to win him over. And
I will say one thing that I was, having been a long time Star Wars fan and someone who was a big fan of the expanded universe, which is now the Legends.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
There was a part of me that was really hoping that Kylo Ren's real name would be Jason.
Yeah.
As a nice hat tip to the EU.
I was a little bothered when I first heard that Disney was scrapping all of that, and it's like it was a blow to me personally.
Yeah, to me I was conflicted. My first reaction is, well, that's a slap in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for all of us who have spent tons of money buying your books and all this stuff, to now be told, well, hey, this just didn't happen. That sucks.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a creative standpoint, from let's give these people the freedom to make the best movie they can, it makes total sense. Because first of all, there was stuff that contradicted itself so much throughout the EU. Just up one side and down the other. Some of that just had to do with changes that George Lucas made when making the prequels. Some of that had to do with just a whole shit ton of different people making books and no one paying as close attention as they should have to everything. But yeah, it was kind of a blow. And Jason Solo, who was in the books, was a twin son of Han and Leia, and he does eventually turn to the dark side.
Yep.
It would have been kind of cool. But also then, how do you sit back and explain, okay, let's pick up after the Vong War and after Jason Solo just went bananas and took over the galaxy and Janna had to kill him, and oh, by the way, Anakin's dead and Luke had a wife but she's gone, and
didn't Jason kill her?
Do what?
Didn't Jason kill her?
He did. He killed Mara Jade.
Yeah.
But to the average, viewer, the average moviegoer, they wouldn't know what the hell is going on.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, I understand why they did it. I'm just still a little irritated about it. I mean, that's not going to keep me from reading any of that stuff, but...
Yeah, and I have not read any of the new books. I checked a couple of them out from the library, but I just never got around to actually reading them.
I reserved Aftermath. I haven't picked it up yet.
Yeah, that one looks good, because that's the one that takes place basically right after Return of the Jedi.
Right.
There is... It seems that most of these books kind of are taking place in between the prequels and the original trilogy, with Aftermath taking place afterwards.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they've done anything that takes place really before, but it's Yeah, I'm still really curious about, what aspects of the EU are they going to bring over? Because obviously, using the name Ben, I think, is a bit of a hat tip to Luke's kid in the EU was
Yeah,
Ben Skywalker.
right.
Um, but how much of the ancient Jedi history that they had created? Because within the last few years in the EU, they had created a whole lot of stories about the beginnings of the Jedi Order.
The Old Republic, yeah.
And so, how much of that are they going to mine? Was there ever a guy named Exar Kun out there?
Yeah.
Did any of that happen?
One of my favorite characters, by the way.
Yeah, he was a cool character. But yeah, I guess we'll see.
So here's an interesting question for you then. Now that we've mentioned that, out of all the expanded universe, who are, let's say, your top 3 favorite characters?
Oh, Mara Jade. Then I would probably tie for second Han and Leia's kids, Jason, Janna, and Anakin. And then, oh God, what was his name? The guy, it was Kip Duran. Was that it?
Okay, yeah.
He was a Jedi, correct? He was
Yes.
the one who went dark in the Jedi Academy trilogy.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
Good choices.
And,
okay.
And Cornhorn, and I know I pronounced his name wrong.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
But the book that was about him, I, Jedi, is phenomenal. It's one of the best Star Wars books I'd ever read, and it takes place during the Jedi Academy trilogy. So that's those would be my favorites. How about you?
I'd have to go with Kir Kanos, who is from the Crimson Empire series.
Okay.
And then I'd have to go with Exar Kun from the Tales of the Jedi, Old Republic stuff. And then third one I'd probably have to go with Mara Jade. I really liked Mara Jade when I first read the Thrawn trilogy.
Such a good trilogy.
I thought, yeah, and I really would have loved to have seen a movie come out of that, or even maybe just an animated movie would have been great.
That would have been cool.
Speaking of animated and Star Wars, have you been watching Star Wars Rebels at all?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you should really check that out. It's really good. I think it is.
I've heard it's good. I think I checked out a couple discs of the first season recently from the library, and I just never got around to it.
Okay. It's good. They're in their second season now. Of course, it takes place. Anybody that doesn't know, it takes place between episode 3 and episode 4. Did you ever watch any of the Clone Wars?
I remember when those originally came out, and they were like the 10-minute long things, and then that was put together in one collection on DVD that came out. So I watched that.
Okay, so that was like the Japanimation version of Clone Wars. And then they came out with the one. Well, there was two different versions of the Clone Wars. There was the Clone Wars that you're referring to, which if you watch them in their entirety as a whole, you see that there's a connection between episode 2 and how they're bridging episode 2 and episode 3 together in a nice, neat package.
Right.
Whereas the Clone Wars that most people will remember was the one that went on for like 5 seasons, and it was more I'm not sure what type of animation you call that. It was a different type of animation. You can watch them all on Netflix now. I mean, I own the first 2 seasons, and slowly but surely watching the rest of them on Netflix when I get a chance. But those are really good, and of course now I don't remember why I was bringing that up.
That's a good question. I think just asking in general if I had watched those.
Yeah. What I was going to say is what I was precipitating is this prequel movie that's going to be coming out next year, and I wonder how much of that movie is going to refer to the Star Wars Rebels characters, if at all.
That's a good question. You're talking about Rogue One.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big unknown, because it is now officially all intertwined and all canon.
Right. I mean, Rebels is definitely canon because it's made by Disney.
Right. No, it's all the books, all the shows, everything. And then the only thing basically the Clone Wars cartoon, the films, and now Rebels and everything else that comes out now going forward is all canon. Comic books, the whole kit and caboodle. So that is nice, knowing that everything that you read is canon. Because I don't like bothering, I guess is lack of a better term, but I don't like taking time with stuff that's not considered canon.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of fan fiction. Nothing wrong with it. Yeah. I know there's a lot of very talented writers that do it. It's not for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll be a really interesting question. And it would also be neat is if they ever bring in, is Wedge Antilles going to finally get some much needed on screen love that he has been missing for 30, 40 years.
Well, this movie is supposed to take place between 3 and 4, so I don't know how much he's going to be involved in it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, only time will tell. I guess we'll find out next year. But as far as stories, one person's story who I'd really like to learn more about, personally, is Maz Kanata. I really would like to know her backstory.
Is that the old lady?
Yeah, from
the glasses.
Awakens. Yeah.
Yeah, she was a fascinating character. I liked her, and very much in the whole. She's the wise. If we're doing like the hero's journey, she is the wise old wizard who is there to give you advice. So she's the Obi-Wan of this one.
That's good. That's a good analogy. I'd have to say Finn is the Han Solo character. Rey being the Luke Skywalker character. And then Maz Kanata would be the Obi-Wan character.
I agree. Yeah, that is. I think you're right.
Now speaking of Rey, have you read any of the theories, or do you have any of your own as to who she is?
I've heard the theories that she's Luke's daughter, and while some of that makes sense, it would make the Star Wars universe incredibly small if it just so happened the same group of people keep bumping into each other. That's awfully convenient.
I can understand.
Now, there's another theory I saw that I didn't read much about, but some people think that maybe she is Obi-Wan's kid, that maybe in his time in the desert he got jiggy with it with somebody.
Well, I had heard grandkid.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that,
But yeah, I read.
I mean, does that mathematically? How does that add up? Because so let's think about this. Obi-Wan was 35 when at the end of Attack of the Clone, or at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
He was 55 in A New Hope when he died. There's about 10 years between A New Hope and Jedi. Is that how long, or how much time takes place between New Hope and Jedi?
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Probably about 7 years, I think.
7 years. So if you think about it, so he would have been... So in between the time he could have knocked someone up, so let's say 10 years before A New Hope. So that is then... So we got 10 years, and then we got another 7. So we got 17 years between that time and the end of Jedi, and we got 30 more years now.
Right.
So we're looking at 17, 37. So Okay, for an Oklahoman, definitely could be a grandkid.
Well, I don't see how it could be a kid, though. How it could be
It's a galaxy far, far away. Who knows how these things work?
I don't know.
And
But
maybe she is maybe this is the midichlorians getting back into it, impregnating. Who knows?
who knows?
My kind of hope is that she is just some other person.
Yeah.
Maybe she is a somehow distant relative of somebody. Maybe she comes from, Obi-Wan's extended family, because, back in the day, the Jedi were all plucked from as little chitlins, and they never knew their family. So I don't know. Who knows? It's
For me, the Luke Skywalker offspring seems to make the most sense.
Yeah, but it's also really convenient.
Really convenient. I do agree with that. It just seems to make sense based off of little clues that were placed throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could be wrong, and everybody who had that theory could be wrong as well. We may not know until episode 9.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other backstory that I'd like to hear about is of course, now his name is escaping me. Snoke.
Yes. Now there are theories that he is Darth Plagueis.
I was going to bring that up. I had just read that today, and I was like, that wouldn't make a lot of sense.
It would. Especially when you look at the fact that, at least in the film, the only time we see Snoke is actually a hologram.
Right.
And it's a ginormous hologram, so I don't know if that's real life, if he just likes to make his hologram super big.
I don't think it is, because remember the first time we saw the Emperor's hologram, it was huge.
That's true. That is true. The other thing is, the Darth Plagueis book had, because the cover of it has, Palpatine kneeling down to Plagueis, and Plagueis is freaking huge.
Yeah.
So, and facial feature wise, sort of, kind of, maybe, again though, the EU, all the old books are thrown out, doesn't mean a darn thing. Yeah, I mean, that would be quite kind of cool, but in a way, I don't want them too often going to the well of, hey, let's make sure that everyone here is interconnected somehow. Because I'd like to think that there's more to the universe than that. Yeah. While there's the coolness to it, there's also it makes the universe too small, and this needs to be this grand thing.
Well, I mean, how big can the galaxy really be?
Pretty freaking big.
Okay.
Pretty freaking.
You know what
big.
I did notice about this new movie is every one of the planets that they mentioned, I've never heard of before.
Yes, they were going to all new planets, and I think most people in the first trailer, when we first saw it, we saw the desert. I think everyone assumed it was Tatooine.
Yeah.
And then they said, no, it's not Tatooine. It's this other planet, Jakku.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they are going with new planets. There's so much to this universe and this galaxy. Why do you think we had well over 30 years of books exploring it? We don't need to just go to the same well with the same people over and over and over. Let's get some, spice it up a little bit.
Even in the video games, like the one that I have that me and Joey have started playing again is called... where's it at? It's around here somewhere. It's called Knights of the Old Republic. And of course it takes place, way before the prequels. It's
right.
It takes place, the one that the book, that particular game takes place right after the end of the Mandalorian Wars.
Okay.
But we've been playing that, and the planets on that are not of the movies either. And then, I mean, you've got all these, to think about the old Republic history, all these planets that were never mentioned in any of the movies, like Onderon and Korriban, and it's just, there's so many. It's you're right. This is a huge galaxy, and then think about when you get into the New Jedi Order, you get into places where that are not of the galaxy. So now you're talking about a completely different galaxy.
Yep.
And how.
And I will say that the New Jedi Order was my favorite thing in the expanded universe. I loved that series. And granted, that was the thing that when I really first, as an adult, is when I really first started reading. And I started reading Star Wars books. Yeah. And I had read... I think I read the final book of the Thrawn trilogy, because I'd read either the first two, or I know I read the second one right when it came out, and loved it. And then, so then I picked up a copy of Vector Prime by R.A. Salvatore, which is a phenomenal book. And but before I read that, I went back and I read the Jedi Academy trilogy. And I think I read Dark Empire, which was the series where Luke went to
the dark side. Yeah. Are you still there, Dave?
The dark side.
I think we lost you.
And there was a clone of Palpatine, and yeah, I sure am. Okay. You're cutting out a bit on me though.
Oh, weird.
Okay. Yeah. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. Good.
But yeah, Dark Empire. They actually made that entire trilogy into a comic book trade paperback, which is how I read it.
Yeah, that's how it was only released as a comic.
Oh, okay.
That one was never a book.
Okay.
And that one was, if I'm not mistaken, that one was written by. Was that written by Kevin J. Anderson?
I think it is. Let me double check here.
Because if not, I don't think it was, because he was working on the Jedi Academy trilogy, and then Dark Empire came out, and he had to go through and make some changes because of that. But the one thing I thought was strange with the Jedi Academy trilogy is it takes place maybe 5 years after Jedi, I think. Maybe 10, not very long. But at that point, Luke's a Jedi Master. I'm like, what?
It was written by Tom Veitch.
Okay, that's right. So yeah, and the theory was that, well, he faced the Emperor, he defeated the Emperor, he went to the dark side, and he came back, so he's a Jedi Master. And I'm thinking to myself, the fool's been a Jedi for like 5 years. How is he already a Master?
Yeah, that was a little hard.
That always bothered me.
Yeah.
But oh well.
But as far as the New Jedi Order, I'm sure it's a great series of everything that I've read synopsises of the entire series, but the only one that I've ever actually read was the book it was the copy of Vector Prime that you gave me.
Okay.
We were working at Sprint, and
and
you gave me a copy of Vector Prime, and I read that, and I liked it. I loved it, but that's as far as it went. I haven't read any of the other ones, but I don't know. I think I eventually will. There are other. You're cutting out again.
Yeah, so are you.
Oh man. Okay.
Good fun. Anyway, it's a daunting series. It's like picking up, Wheel of Time or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a serious investment. You could get away with kind of reading the main stories, the main books, and I would have to look at the list to sit back and go, okay, these are like the 4 or 5 you need to read.
Yeah, you'll have to do that for me.
Yeah, because I know Star by Star is the one kind of in the middle, which is a must. The very last one is a must. There are a few that are just, I'll have to do that one day. But yeah, I really enjoyed that series. It got me into reading in general, and it was very well done. It would be neat to someday maybe see Lucasfilm and Disney do something with that idea of some extra galaxy, something from outside the galaxy.
I think it would be a really good idea at some point for them to just do something about the Yojin Vong. I mean,
yeah, that's going to be a big undertaking. And besides, I mean, we know the plans are, at least as of right now, they're doing 7, 8, and 9, and there's a year in between 7, 8, and 9, correct? So 7 came out this year,
right?
8's going to come out in 17.
Well, Rogue One, or whatever they're calling it, comes out next year.
Right. There's going to be a Star Wars movie a year coming out for at least the next 5 or 6 years.
Because after Chapter 8, the next year they're doing the Han Solo movie, which is obviously going to have to be a prequel.
Yeah, and oh man, the actor that gets. God bless you, man. Whoever gets that part.
I don't envy that guy.
No, those are some shoes to fill.
They're also going to be doing a Boba Fett movie.
So Boba Fett is one of those characters that was absolutely ruined in the prequels.
Yes.
And he was really cool. They did some really cool stuff with him. In the expanded universe, he played a good part in the New Jedi Order in a few books, and then the series that came out after that, not the one about the bugs, but the one after that, Legacy of the Force, I think is what it was called. The one where whichever one where Jason goes bad.
Oh.
There was a series of books in there that were focused on him and the Mandalorians, and that was really cool.
I was going to ask, in the New Jedi Order, doesn't he actually become Mandalore?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if they tapped into more of that aspect of it, I think that would be cool. I don't know, are they going to have to get that same guy, that actor who played Jango Fett, who sucked? Now, granted, did he suck because George Lucas was directing him, or does he just suck?
No telling.
Oh, God. And then, another irritant, George, that you did, sir, in the episode in Empire, when he went in and changed Boba Fett's changed the vocals. Not as much that he changed it to the new actor who since Boba Fett is now a clone of Jango Fett, it logically makes sense for him to sound exactly like Jango Fett, fine. But he changed the way that he said the line, "as you wish," and completely changed the connotation of it. Went from Boba Fett going, "Oh, well, okay, fine," to being like a yes master.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, the relationship between Boba Fett and Darth Vader was always they kind of respected each other, but they also knew at someday we're coming to blows, and it's not guaranteed, Vader, that you're winning.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've read any of the expanded universe, then you know that they've got a very tense relationship.
Right.
Yeah, I have... And we could do a whole other show talking about the problems of the special editions.
Yes.
Just the one scene alone in A New Hope that has, so many people up in arms about.
Yeah, Han shooting first.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. The Jabba the Hutt scene was ridiculous.
Oh, God. And then, was that guy on Weight Watchers? Because, he's gigantic in episode 1, and then we see him in episode 4, and he's teeny tiny, and then he's gigantic again in episode 6.
Yeah. I don't know.
He's doing Jenny Craig for the Hutts? I mean, good Lord.
It made some...
There were a couple things I think they did that worked. The thing that worked better than anything else was in Empire, the scenes in Cloud City where they changed the walls in a lot of the rooms into windows.
Yeah, yeah.
That stuff looked fantastic.
I thought a lot of the graphics that they did in the special edition, improving the graphics and some of the special effects was good, but when you add to the essence of the movie, that's where I have the problem.
Yeah, it was adding that extra crap was stupid.
Yeah.
And there was no reason. Changing the music in the cantina scene in A New Hope, in Jabba's lair, and most notoriously taking out Yub Nub at the end of Jedi. Oh, no.
Now, see, I just watched, not for the first time, obviously, I just watched Return of the Jedi with Joey last night.
And for folks, for those who don't know, Joey is Steve's.
Oh yeah.
Son.
He's a mini me. He's about as big a nerd as I am.
Yes, he is. I can attest.
And so we're watching this, and I have to say, for me, and unfortunately I have the special edition and not the original. The part in Jedi that he redid that annoys me the most, that you just mentioned it, was the music scene in Jabba's palace. It's the most annoying thing, having remembered what it originally was like.
Yeah, and adding that extra CGI dancer chick.
Yes, it was so dumb.
And it looked terrible. It looked so bad, because when you've got a whole ton of basically Jim Henson creations that are surrounding everyone that look phenomenal, and then you throw in a blatantly obvious CG character jumping around, it looks awful. Let's just, George, no, son, no.
You know what I noticed that was also horrible at the end of Return of the Jedi? I hadn't noticed it before, and this is exclusive to the special edition. Right after the Death Star's blown up and they're having their celebrations, they cut to a scene to what's obviously Naboo, and you hear Jar Jar Binks in the background.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
it's like,
pretty awful.
Well, wait a minute, wouldn't he be dead by now?
We's a free. But I mean, you don't know how we don't know how long Gungans live.
I guess not. But that was just horrible. I noticed it for the first time last night, and I was just like, oh my gosh, why'd they have to do that?
That was the special editions.
Yeah.
That was because they made the special editions, and he made the prequels, and he went in and said, okay, well, let me tweak a few things again to make it fit in line with the prequels I just made.
And that brings up another point that I had a problem with the special edition at the end of Return of the Jedi when the ghosts appear. Okay, you've got Yoda, who looks like Yoda. You've got the Alec Guinness Obi-Wan Kenobi, because when he died, he was Alec Guinness. And then you've got the Hayden Christensen Anakin Skywalker. Why? Why do you have the younger Anakin as opposed to the one who died?
Yeah, the only thing I can think is that was when he was that was before he went to the dark side. But that's such a stretch.
But he came to the light side at the very end.
Exactly, I know.
It
Choir,
was
and you're preaching to it.
Ridiculous.
Though that's not the biggest cardinal sin that George Lucas did to the entire thing. Even worse than the Han Solo scene in A New Hope.
What could be worse than that?
It is there is that final dance scene at the end of Jedi, and the changing of the music, and you watch everyone's dancing, and you see Lando, Billy D, he's clapping, and he's off rhythm. It's physically impossible.
Why
Billy
would Lando be off rhythm? Oh, wow.
A smooth black man like that. And I mean that, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Billy D is an amazing talent. There's no way in the Force could allow Billy D to be that offbeat. It was just, and that to me, I remember watching that, and that just jumped out at me screaming. And also the music sucked. Yub Nub was so cute and worked so well. The original little Ewok, Muppet thing was perfect. And no, we're gonna have to change it. Yeah. But the funny thing is I will give George Lucas credit. At least he's consistent, because when Attack of the Clones came out in DVD, he actually even changed something in that from the theatrical version. It was minor, but when Jango Fett is battling Mace Windu, he added some sparks into the jetpack so people understand why the jetpack doesn't work right before he gets decapitated.
Ah,
right. The son of a bitch cannot leave anything alone.
So yeah, we've had a lot of fun talking about Star Wars today.
Yes. Now, so I don't know how long we're going to do this for. How long have we been?
We're coming up on 55 minutes.
Okay. Well, we are at the halfway mark of the current fall season of television programming, and what a season it has been so far. I mean, we've got Arrow doing with a great season. Flash is killing it. Gotham is excellent. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been the best season it's had.
Yeah.
Jessica Jones was phenomenal. Daredevil, which came out earlier in the year, was amazing. And we've got coming up, starting next month, Agent Carter's coming out. DC Legends of Tomorrow is coming out. And I know I'm pretty sure I'm missing out. Supergirl had started, and that's been pretty good. So what are your thoughts on the current state of at least? And these are all comic book related. I mean,
right?
There's a ton of nerd shows out there, but I'm just thinking of the comic book ones.
I've got to say the one, as much as I love Gotham and Flash and Arrow, the new season that I'm really looking forward to has got to be Daredevil season 2. I'm just really looking forward to seeing that, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, of course, I'm a big Punisher fan, and Punisher will be, from what I hear, a very big part of season 2.
Yes, Batman with a gun is coming to Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because even in the comic books, they are at odds with each other all the time. So the fact that Punisher is going to be in a Daredevil TV show is not really all that surprising at all. But even if Daredevil was not going to be in the second season, Elektra is also going to be in the second season, which is going to be amazing.
Yeah, apparently Frank Miller is not fond of the idea of Elektra being in there, and he has talked a little trash because he created Elektra, and he's like, well, she's not my Elektra, and he even talked a little bit of trash about the first season of Daredevil, albeit he hasn't watched it. So, and it's funny considering a lot of that first season was based on his Man Without Fear graphic novel.
It really was, yeah.
The whole thing with Stick was a character he created. Yep. The whole thing with the black suit, which I really liked. When I first saw the pictures of that black costume, when they first started putting out pictures before the series came out on Netflix, it's like, oh, that looks kind of wonky. It gave me flashbacks to the Trial of the Incredible Hulk TV movie that had Daredevil in a black costume.
Yeah.
So I was really not sure, but then in action, moving around, it looked great, and it was realistic. This is what somebody's going to do who is just, a jabroni on the street who happens to have some special talents, who's going to try to go out and kick some ass and, hide his identity.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what you're going to make.
Yeah. Well, Frank Miller can say what he wants, but I think it's going to be. I think that Elektra is going to be an awesome addition to the show.
I think so too.
Now, though, the jury's still out as to their casting choice for Punisher. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I don't think he was the perfect choice. But we'll see how he works out.
Ladies and gentlemen, just now take this with a grain of salt. This is the same gentleman who a couple of years ago was poo-pooing on the idea of Grant Gustin playing the Flash, who now loves Grant Gustin as the Flash.
Yes. Okay. Now keep in mind, most of my whenever I hear casting choices and I don't like them, I'm usually proven wrong. Now,
yeah. Speaking of just randomly casting choices that were somewhat controversial, and this is going away from the TV thing, I just watched that new Fantastic Four film. Checked it out from the library. We just got it the other day. For those of you who don't know, I happen to work in a library. That's why most of the stuff I read and watch I get from there, at least DVDs and book-wise. Yeah. And, I watched it. It wasn't good. It wasn't the horrible piece of shit everyone made it out to be, I thought. And maybe that's just because I went in expecting the absolute worst film since Manos: The Hands of Fate. But it wasn't. I mean, especially the first 2/3 of it, up until that whole 1 year later thing, that part was all pretty darn good. I mean, granted, this is coming from a guy, I've never read a lot of Marvel comics. As much of a comic fan as I am a DC fan, first and foremost. I just prefer their characters and their mythologies and everything they have set up. So I never read the Fantastic Four. I'm not familiar really with the ins and outs of their history. My biggest exposure to Doctor Doom was actually in an issue of Iron Man. It was like Iron Man number 249 or 250 from back in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was collecting comics back then, and I was reading Iron Man at the time, which no one gave two shits about. And there was an issue that was basically Iron Man against Doctor Doom, and it was great. Mm-hmm. So that's really my exposure to Doom. Obviously, they ruined Doctor Doom in this film, but
did they ruin Doctor Doom in the original Fantastic Four movies?
Yeah. And now, have you seen this Fantastic Four?
I have not.
Okay. Pick it up from library. Find a stream online where you don't have to pay for it. Torrent it, whatever. Because you should just see it. It is, I will say, it is better than those two other horrific pieces of crap that Fox put out. The casting is certainly better. Yeah, the problem with the casting in this film, in this new one, is they actually got a lot of really good actors and didn't give them a whole lot to work with. And also, apparently, the studio and the director really butted heads, and there was a lot of just bad stuff went down during the making of this film. And if someone would ever make a documentary about the making of this film, I bet that would be fascinating. I would love to watch that. But yeah, it was. If you have nothing better to do, you got 2 hours to kill, check it out. It's not awful. Now, it's not good.
2016 is going to be a very good year, I think, for movies in general.
At least for genre films.
For us nerds. I mean, in February, the Deadpool movie comes out. I'm really looking forward to that.
Me too. Then Batman v Superman.
Yeah, I'm trying to do them in order here. Let's see, what do we got coming up in March?
Batman v Superman.
Batman v Superman. Yeah, now that looks really good. Aside from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Doomsday.
You stole my line.
I did. But, and speaking of bad casting, when they first announced the casting for Batman in this movie, I was horrified. Not so much anymore.
No, I think Ben Affleck is going to be great. I think based on what we've seen in these trailers, he nails the part. And the thing, he is a lifelong nerd.
Yeah.
He is a comic book fan. He knows this character. He knows the character's history. I mean, my God, he's like best friends with Kevin Smith, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
So this guy knows comics and he knows superheroes. So yeah, it's so too many people gave him a hard time when this casting first came out. They immediately thought of that Daredevil movie, which I don't think is that terrible. It is better than Ann Lee's Hulk.
Yes, I'll go with that. Yeah.
It is better than the two other Fantastic Four movies.
Okay, I'll give you that.
It is better than Batman and Robin.
Oh.
It is better than Superman 4: Quest for Peace.
What isn't better than...
Fair enough.
Okay. Well, moving on. We got in May, the new Captain America movie comes out.
Which looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Not so much a genre film, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing the Snowden film. But I digress. Also in May is the X-Men Apocalypse movie.
So you being a big X-Men fan and being a huge fan of that storyline, what do you think of the trailers and how this is all starting to look?
As a whole, I'm really excited about the movie. As a whole, I don't like I don't like the way Apocalypse looks. I think he looks a little too Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Cartoony.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with that character is everything I've seen of him, the way he's been portrayed in the comics, he looks pretty damn cartoony.
Yeah, I'll give you that, but I just don't like the way he's looking on film. That being said, I mean, I think it's going to be a great film. I'm really looking forward to it. Gosh, what else is coming out? Well, there's a new Ghostbusters movie coming out.
There's Suicide Squad.
Yeah, that's right.
Which looks fantastic.
New Star Trek movie coming out next summer.
And I did not have as many so many people really complained about that trailer. It didn't bother me that much. I mean, it kind of goes along with the new timeline that they've created. Is it the world that Gene Roddenberry created? No.
Mm-hmm.
Is it... Gene Roddenberry did something very special with Star Trek in that he created this world that he used for a lot of social commentary through science fiction.
Yeah.
And that even continued into the Next Generation and in the films. A lot of that vision was lost, I think, when he passed away, because there were certain rules that he had set up, like the original cast will never meet the Next Generation. And with the exception, of course, of Spock, which you can easily write off as Vulcans live a whole lot longer than humans. And then the Dr. McCoy cameo in the first episode was, well, he's just lived extra long, and plus he did that Vulcan mind meld, so he's got a little bit of the Vulcan aging thing going on. But he had this rule of you will never see these two casts face to face. He passes away with not even in a couple of years. You have Scotty showing up in from what I remember, a pretty bad episode of Next Generation, and then you have the film Generations, which has Kirk and Picard running around, buddy copping it, and I mean, and that's not even a terrible movie by any stretch. It's not awful, but it's a lot of that kind of hopefulness for a vehicle, a science fiction vehicle for social consciousness, social change, and to use as allegory was lost when Gene Roddenberry died. And it's so from that standpoint, we're not getting that with the new films, and we're not going to. It's a whole different world now. Exactly. And J.J. Abrams, even though he didn't direct this third one, he's a completely different kind of filmmaker. He produced this new one. And that's not to say it's not good, because the first two films I enjoyed a lot. Yeah. You can make the argument that it's not Star Trek per se, and I can see that, but sometimes that's getting so nitpicky. That's like the political talking heads that throw around terms like rhino and dino because you don't follow right in line with a party line or party platform. You're obviously a fake. It's kind of a bad analogy, but
well, it makes sense. But
so yeah, I mean, but I'm looking forward to the new Star Trek.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed them. I think the cast has done a good job.
Yeah.
The guy who plays Spock is kind of eerily close to Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, he's good. So yeah, that comes out next summer. There are some other movies. Got a list here. I'm trying to find.
Is Gambit coming out next year?
Yeah, that comes out in October. I'm looking forward to that.
And then there's also another. Isn't there another Marvel film?
I think so. There's a new Underworld film coming out that I think is going to be good. Doctor Strange is coming out in November. That should be interesting. Now that one I think is gonna be very interesting because it's gonna have Benjamin Cumberbatch playing Doctor Strange, which I
Benedict.
Think what's
Benedict
that?
Cumberbatch. It's Benedict Cumberbatch.
What did I say?
Benjamin.
Oh,
Close
okay.
enough.
Yeah, close enough.
It's okay.
But yeah, I think that's going to be. I think he's going to do really well. I think he did a really good job as Khan in the second Star Trek movie. I've liked pretty much everything I've seen him in, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, he's a very good actor. I haven't seen him in a lot, but he is a very, very good actor, and yeah, I think he that's going to be interesting because it's really Marvel Films' first kind of diving into magic.
Yeah.
And there's some talk that the whole in Ant-Man when Scott Lang went subatomic and went into the quantum realm, that's going to kind of interconnect with Doctor Strange, and that he taps into that somehow. And then there was the whole thing with Thor saying, well, what, your ancestors called magic and what you call science, we say is the same thing.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been fairly grounded. They haven't really just full-blown dived into magic.
Yeah.
Unlike the DC television side of things, which has just jumped into the deep end of magic with the Constantine TV show, and then with Constantine's appearance on Arrow.
Yeah.
So magic's there, and also with Damien Dark, and then with the Lazarus Pit and all that. Yeah. So they've just gone full blown for it. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with magic. That's something I'm looking forward to.
That should be interesting. And then, of course, the Rogue One movie's coming out in December. And then there's actually an Assassin's Creed movie coming out that I'm kind of looking forward to. Assassin's Creed, of course, is a video game.
And there's also a World of Warcraft movie coming out.
I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. The trailer looks interesting. I mean, it's some of the graphics look very CGI. One other thing that is coming out early in the year is MTV, of all places, is putting out it's either 10 or 13 episode series, the Shannara Chronicles.
I was just about to mention that. I saw the trailer for that, and I was like,
holy crap, it looks so good.
Will be interesting.
Oh my god. And that is based on the book Elfstones of Shannara, or Shannara, however you're supposed to pronounce it. Yeah. I pronounce it Shannara, which is an excellent book by Terry Brooks. I'm a big Terry Brooks fan. Yeah. And this has been a long time coming. There's different companies. If Warner Brothers had bought the rights to the Shannara series at one point and then didn't do anything with it. And so, yeah, MTV, you think MTV, the what?
Yeah, but they're not really music television anymore. They're just a bunch of random shows.
Yeah, and apparently that Teen Wolf show is pretty good and has done well. It's on like its 4th or 5th season or something. But based on these trailers, this looks fantastic. Yeah. They filmed it in New Zealand, where they filmed Lord of the Rings, so it's going to look amazing. and they've got some great actors in there. They've got Manu Bennett, who played Slade Wilson in
Oh yeah,
Arrow,
yeah.
and he plays Al-Anon. He's the wizard character.
It looks like it's going to be a really interesting show. Now, I'm not really a huge fan of high fantasy. I haven't read any of those books, but it does look like it's going to be really interesting. Now, speaking of not being a fan of high fantasy, I've been delving in it a little bit lately, mostly because of my son. He seems to be a big fan of it, and interestingly enough, earlier this week, Joey and I played our very first game of Dungeons and Dragons with a group.
Oh, how'd that go?
It went pretty well. We had some fun. There was about 6 of us playing, including the dungeon master. But Joey really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, I've played role playing games before, just never, again, not being a big fan of high fantasy, never really got into the Dungeons and Dragons bit. Most of the role playing games that I played were well, I played a lot of Star Wars, big surprise, role-playing games. I used to play a game called Rifts, which was one of my favorite role-playing games. So I'm not a stranger to role-playing, but just never really got involved in Dungeons and Dragons, and Joey really wanted to. And so a guy who just started working at my place of employment a few weeks ago, I saw some books that he was carrying around, and I was like, "Oh, interesting. That's my son wants to play that." And he's like, "Well, that's interesting because I'm putting a new group together," and that's how I got involved, is because I got Joey involved in it, and so we actually the players' handbooks for those games are ridiculously expensive, understandably so. I mean, they don't produce a lot of books as far as quantity, so they have to get their money back, so they charge exorbitant amounts. So basically, if you go and buy a brand new player's handbook for Dungeons and Dragons, it's $50. So me being, my first idea was, let's go check out Amazon. You're still talking $30. So I went to the library and borrowed one.
There you go. That's the way that folks use your library.
Yeah. So my plan is to just keep renewing it until they won't let me renew it anymore.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Because at least with those books, I remember from the few I've flipped through, they are always exceptionally well crafted.
They really are. Yeah.
So at least you kind of do get your money's worth. Yeah. It's interesting that how you talk about it, that you're not really a big fan of, or you've never gotten into high fantasy. When really Star Wars is a high fantasy. I
thought you'd bring that up. It is a lot more fantasy than it is sci-fi.
It is. I mean, if you were going to make a hard line distinction between, is this fantasy or science fiction, it is fantasy. If you were going to have to call it one way or the other, it goes fantasy.
I could understand that.
And really, I mean, the drawing, the line that is the distinction point with fantasy and science fiction, or almost with fantasy and just about anything else, is there magic? If the answer is yes, it is fantasy.
Okay. I'll go with that.
The Force is magic.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, and once you get, so for you, it's I think once you get used to the kind of medieval settings,
yeah,
type of things, and not all of them I get into. I read Terry Brooks, and that's about the most high fantasy I read. There's a series called The Noble Dead, written by Barb and J.C. Hendy, which is it's a high fantasy. The first book was called Dampier, and the main character is this half human, half vampire, and so it starts. It came out during it was during the last like 2 years of when Buffy the Vampire Slayer was still on TV, and there was kind of a little bit of a vampire resurgence at that time. This was pre-Twilight, pre-Vampire Diaries TV show, all that, and that it kind of got it was picked up a lot by the vampire crowd.
Yeah.
And then as they kept putting out books, it was becoming more and more this big high fantasy world. And the tagline for the show was always Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Lord of the Rings. And it's quite that first book is excellent. I mean, they've gone on and have written many, many, many books, and I stopped following for I forget what reason. I got the next one and just never got through it, and I've never bothered going back. But that first one is quite good, and that's another good high fantasy starting point type series.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's it. Now, real quick, dude, I know we need to get wrapping this up. We got things to do, but at the beginning of the show, you talked about music. Since even though it's our first show, it's the last show that we were going to do in 2015.
That is true.
You want to talk about your favorite records of the year? Give people
maybe
a sneak
next
peek.
show, because I still haven't got that list completely finished.
Well, how about this? Even if do you have like your kind of top 5 figured out?
More or less, off the top of my head, I'd have to say the new Red City Radio, local Oklahoma band, put out their self-titled album, which is really, it's just phenomenal. Other than that's where the top 5 gets a little blurry. That will probably, I'm most certain that's going to be number 1. Joey Cape put out a new solo album, which I think is really good. Dan Andriano of Alkaline Trio put out a solo album that's really good. There's a new guy who I'd never heard of until you mentioned him. His first name is Adam, and I can't. The last name escapes me.
Oh,
Dorowski or something like that. And
Adam
called
Dorowski
Yay or something like that.
Sorry, Adam, we're butchering your name.
Sorry.
His album's called Yay, and it's
really,
quite good.
Yeah, very good album. The new Beach Slang album is really good.
Oh, that album's phenomenal.
That's all I can think of right now. I don't have my list in front of me.
Yeah, I put out my list because for those of you who don't know, both Steve and I write blogs, and so I put my list came out kind of a little bit halfway through the month, and so I'll just give my top 5 real quick.
Okay.
At number 5, we got Red City Radio's self-titled album, which is honestly, I think the best thing they've ever done, and I have loved pretty much everything they've ever done, and this one was just, they took it to a whole new level of awesome on this record. The next one is Hope is Made of Steel by Northcote. He's kind of the Canadian Dave Haas, Frank Turner is the best way to describe his stuff. Sam Russo's album Greyhound Dreams is number 3. It's just great folk, just freaking fantastic. Then the Beach Slang album, The Things We Do to Find People Who Feel Like Us, is at number 2. And really, number 2 and number 1 could have.
I'm really surprised that one was
places.
Only number 2.
It's honestly, I should have just done a tie for number 1, but yeah, then this was the record more than anything else I was looking forward to this year. But I'm also kind of a sucker for things that I'm not looking for that hit me, and I'm like, holy shit, what is this? Because that was for me last year. That was Beach Slang with me. They came out, they put out an EP. I heard it and I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've heard in forever. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I mean, I listen to all of everything they've recorded. I listen to over and over and over. But then a couple months ago, or not even that long ago, there's a band called Airy and the Pure Heart. They're from Atlanta, and they put out an EP called Heart Songs that just it knocked my socks off. It's very, if you're a fan of like Gaslight Anthem, Dave Haas, Later Day, Against Me type, really anthem-y punk rock and roll stuff, this band is for you. And I've corresponded with the lead singer quite a bit since I put out this review, and he's a super nice guy. So yeah, it's a great album, really worth checking out. It's actually an EP. And then there was my absolute favorite song of the year, which almost was the number one for the record of the year, but I just couldn't really see doing a single. Was a Two Cow Garage song, and the song title is escaping me, so I'm looking at it real quick. It is Let the Boys Be Girls by Two Cow Garage. It is so good. Best song of the year, beyond a shadow of a doubt. You cannot tell me otherwise. So since we're wrapping things up, Steve, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh yeah, good idea. I would say the best place to find me is on Twitter, and it's at Otter272. We will probably get a Twitter account set up for this show, which of course is called Nerdopolis. I would say you can find me on Facebook, but I really don't get on it that often, so don't even bother. We're going to probably set up a Facebook page for this podcast eventually. But yeah, I think Twitter is probably the best place you can find me.
And what about your blog?
Oh, the blog is actually called Otter Limits, and you just go to otterlimits.wordpress.com.
All right. And so you can find, well, I've got a few different projects. So you can find my music blog at oklahomalefty.com. You can find me on Twitter also at oklahomalefty, and find me on the Facebook too, same handle. And then I've got a pro wrestling podcast, which new episode drops tomorrow. I was actually working on that earlier today, putting together my favorite matches of the year list, which was actually really hard because I had basically there was one match that just stood above everything else this year. And if you're not a pro wrestling fan, you need to be. Go find from NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, Bayley versus Sasha Banks for the NXT Women's title. It is unbelievable. I was in tears at the end of the match. I shit you not. Grown 40-year-old ass man crying watching a women's wrestling match. It was that good. So yeah, you can check out the show. Our homepage is aroundtheringok.wordpress.com, and you can also follow me on Twitter there at aroundtheringok. Facebook, same handle. So go check all that shit out. It's pretty awesome.
And you can find that show, and this show, it will be airing on K98talk.com.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm not sure exactly how the whole... We have to ask our good friend Ricky Robinson, who's the host of America Off the Rails here on the K98 Talk. I'm not sure how the podcasts drop, because mine actually never broadcasts on K98. It's just on the podcast page where you can go in and find it. But the K98talk.com proper itself, which no one cares about this at all, so I digress. But yeah, you can find us there because we're all part of the whole Spark Radio Network, K98 Talk family.
Yep. Cool. So
thank you for paying the bills, Robert.
And of course, thanks for everybody listening to this podcast and this inaugural show. I think really well, and we'll be looking forward to doing the next one. Yeah, we should do it next week. All right, great. And we'll see you guys out on the airwaves.
Take care, guys.